Good evening. This is your humble host, Jamal Baraka for GT Media Reviews, also the creator of Planet EJOBN, the largest and most popular black group on Facebook. Today we're going to be discussing Spider-Man Far From Home, but we're also going to be making a quick announcement real quick. Okay, so GT Media Reviews has been around for about a year. I created it as a response to a lot of the content and responses I was getting for throwing my hat behind some of the figures in Comicsgate, full disclosure, and it was also a reaction to a lot of the negativity that I was feeling around the time. It was really hard being honest about my feelings about situations and my belief system, being a conservative and all that. So rather than running from the responses I was getting, I thought it was cool to say, this is what it is. Jamal is trash. But I've come to I'm in a different spot right now. My headspace is cleared up. I'm not really feeling that my content is trash or is reflective of trash. I don't believe my belief systems are in any way negative or problematic, as people would say. I just have a different thought process than a lot of people in my circle. So rather than me saying, hey, I'm the bad guy, I'm just going to say, hey, I'm just different. So as opposed to me using the title of garbage tier media, we're transitioning to God tier media. And I know that's pretentious as hell, but it's just what we want to do. Is the content that I'm making, I don't feel like it's trash. And maybe these videos suck. They aren't the best, but they aren't trash. So we're going to be using the moniker God Tier Media, and part of that is because I paid for the name GT Media Reviews, and we're going to use that name, damn it, one way or another. If you have a better name to use for GT Media, I'm open to it, but right now we're going to stick with God Tier, and I'm going to try to keep improving my content for you going forward. Now, let's get to the reason why we're making this video. I saw Spider-Man Far From Home this week, and I'm going to say it's probably one of the best Spider-Man movies I've seen in a long time. It has its problems, but for the most part, I doubt any fan of the character will walk away from the movie thinking it's a bad movie. I also feel like if you're a fan of the comic book version of Spider-Man, this may not be something that you will be over the moon about. Let's talk about the positives. I enjoyed Tom Holland as Spider-Man. Tom Holland is probably the best Peter Parker we've had, and I know there's going to be a lot of people that are beholden to the Raimi movies and Tobey Maguire's take on the character, but I think that Tom Holland is a more relatable version of Peter Parker, and I think his circle of friends are more relatable to a younger audience, and how you take those characters is probably going to depend on how you feel about kids and movies in general. I didn't really have much of a problem with the kids, but I can understand people saying, God, what's going on? Another thing is that Spider-Man's supporting cast really don't get much to do in the movie, and that may be a problem, but then again, it may not. The movies are called Spider-Man. You want to see Spider-Man doing stuff. The big draw of the movie, and I'm going to throw spoilers right now because I don't know if you can really talk about the second half of the movie without getting into spoilers. The villain for Spider-Man Far From Home is probably the best Spider-Man movie villain we've seen on screen, with the exception of Kingpin and his crew in Into the Spider-Verse. So live action wise, I'm gonna say that, spoiler, Mysterio is probably the best villain we've seen in the Spider-Man movie, and it's probably one of the best villains we've seen in the MCU. I always liked Mysterio from the comic books, and it was fun to see him realized on the screen because we're at the point now where special effects are so good you can do anything, so now we really can play with the potential of the character. When Spider-Man actually gets to fight Mysterio on the screen, it's a trip. Now, I don't really recommend going to see movies in 3D, but after watching Far From Home, I was like, damn, I might have to go pay the extra $2 and go see this movie in 3D. You know, I can just bring another $2, $3 for this. It's really, the effects of the illusions are so good in the movie that it just took me back, because I just didn't expect what we had. There's some great scenes with Mysterio and Spider-Man, and to me, those are the best scenes of the movie. Now, what I didn't really care for in Far From Home were the deep connection to Tony Stark and Peter Parker. Their connection is just, to me, it's weird, because I'm a fan of the comics, and I've been reading Spider-Man comics for most of my life, and the connection is not there in the comic books. And we can say that, hey, this is, it's just a different version and interpretation of the character. But the thing that I don't really care for is that Spider-Man's inspiration generally across all forms of media is that the reason why he became Spider-Man was because he wanted to live up to the memory of Uncle Ben, and the quote, great power equals, great power and great responsibility. But in the MCU, it's like we don't even acknowledge Uncle Ben as being that influence. It's pretty much Spider-Man is basically Tony Stark is basically the MCU's version of Uncle Ben, and that kind of rubs me the wrong way. And I also don't really care for Spider-Man being so intrinsically tied to being a high-tech hero. So he's basically got access to all of a lot of Tony Stark's resources and technology. He's got, he's got Happy there with him with the resources to get him a new suit and everything like that. And I mean, Spider-Man still gets battle damaged and stuff like that, but it's like, it's way more than being your friendly neighborhood Spider-Man. Nothing wrong with that. It's just a different take on the character, and it just rubs me kind of the wrong way as I'm watching the movie. Other than that, it's not really the best movie, and I don't really know if it's going to age as well as a lot of other movies. One of the things about the Raimi movies is that those movies stand on their own. Spider-Man 1 with the Green Goblin is a good standalone movie. Spider-Man 2 with Doc Ock is connected into the trilogy, but it's still a good movie that stands on its own. Spider-Man 3 is not the best version of Spider-Man, but it brings you some closure to that trilogy. We wanted a Spider-Man 4, we didn't get it, but at the end of it, end of Spider-Man 3, there's no more movies. I can live with that. Spider-Man Far From Home doesn't really work as a standalone movie. I mean, it's entertaining, but if you don't watch Endgame or you don't have access to the MCU, there's a lot of references that just don't work. Like, for example, when Quentin Beck reveals that he's Mysterio, we get a montage of scenes where he runs down the connections his crew have to Tony Stark. And it's really cool to see on screen, because it's like, whoa, this ties back to the first Iron Man movie, or it ties back to Iron Man using the barf tech from I want to say Iron Man 3 or the Winter Soldier. And it's really cool because it's like, well, damn, was Kevin Feige thinking that far in advance, or was he just a hell of a creator? I'm gonna say he was just a hell of a creator, and he loves his movies, and he can play with all the tools in his movies. But if you aren't really heavily invested in the MCU, none of that stuff really makes any sense, and it's probably gonna go over your head. So even though I like this movie in a sense, I don't think it works well on its own as those older Spider-Man movies. As far as Zendaya as MJ, she was okay, but she's not Mary Jane. It's a totally different character, and I don't really like the chemistry that these characters have with each other on screen, which is crazy because I think they're both dating in real life, but they have hardly any chemistry on screen, and I don't really like them together on screen. That's just my take on it. They just don't seem like a natural fit, and they've made her character a little bit too weird. As far as the Easter eggs at the very end of the movie, The first post-credit scene is Quentin Beck in a very clever scene. He makes Spider-Man appear to be the person that's behind Mysterio. He kills Mysterio. Well, he makes the illusion so that it appears that Spider-Man kills Mysterio because he wants to be the new Iron Man instead of letting him be the hero. And at first glance, it's really cool. It's shocking or whatever. But when I was driving home, I was like, well, the MCU basically put themselves in a corner with the Spider-Man character. And I say that because once you have Spider-Man's identity revealed, you can't put that genie back in a bottle. So are you going to have Peter Parker basically be Iron Man 2.0 for real, where his identity is exposed, and his friends and family are in constant danger, everybody's following him? I mean, it's a cool storyline, but how do you get his identity back without something weird? How are you going to get him out of this situation? And I don't really put it past the MCU to actually fix this problem, but I just don't see it. I don't understand how they're going to do it. And I think it might have been a bad decision to go that route, but we shall see. The second post-credit scene is interesting, but honestly skippable. I'm not really a fan of the Captain Marvel movie, and the second post-credit scene is basically Nick Fury slacking off in space doing something. We are told multiple times in the movie that the Avengers are off in space doing something, or they're not available. And apparently they're doing something with the Skrulls. The scene is quick, doesn't really make any sense. Could easily be retconned and may not tie into anything, but it's kind of cool. I'm not really. I'm hit and miss about that. It's anything to tie into Captain Marvel, I'm just like, okay. So with that being said, those are my basic thoughts about Spider-Man Far From Home. I'd like you to share your thoughts about the movie in the comments. Be mindful, some people haven't seen the movie. Another thing is, like, when I was watching the run-up, the promotion for this movie, I was listening to Grace Randolph's review of Far From Home, and she's like, well, the post-credit scene and the second half of the movie are so... If you're any sort of fan of Spider-Man, you already knew that Mysterio was the bad guy. And once that's out of the way, you really don't have any more surprises other than the special effects being cool that Mysterio uses in battle. So I think that some of the reactions some of the critics are having out here are really ignoring the fact that Mysterio's been in the cartoons or been in other forms of media for like 50 years. So it's not like this is a brand new character or anything like this. And it's almost the same shtick every time. The only difference is the technology gets better every time he pops up. Yeah, so that's about it. So if you have any questions or you want to talk about Far From Home in the comments, I'm looking forward to hearing any type of communication or feedback on this one. Again, we're changing our name to God Tier Media Reviews, and I appreciate the support. If you like this content, you want to see more videos, let me know. I don't do this for my health. I do it mainly because I like to talk about comic books and movies and stuff like that, but I really more so like talking about comic books. So if you want me to do more content about comics, movies, video games, or anything like that, let me know in the comments, and I will be back at some point in the near future. You can subscribe here, YouTube, either YouTube or Facebook for video content, or if you want to check out my blog, you subscribe there at gtmediareviews.com. You can catch me on social media at Jamal Baraka. I still haven't updated all of my social media. Some of them still say Jamal is trash, but that will be updated soon. So just look for GT Media Reviews and you will find me. Magically, I will appear and all over social media, wherever you're looking for me. And you can get to hear my sexy voice. Yes. So I'll talk to you later. Have a great evening. Bye.